Good evening. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, February 24th, 2021, and we are here at the Freeport High School cafeteria. We have the full board in attendance tonight. Two are joining us remotely, and we'll go through a quick, make sure everybody can hear and be heard before we move on to the minutes. So we'll start with Jeremy.
Present.
Clearly. Okay. Candy.
Yes.
Lindsay. Here. Jen. Here. Susanna.
Here.
Angela. Here. Beth.
Here.
Maura.
Yes.
I am
Can
here.
you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Volley.
Yep.
I feel like everybody's mics are low, so just make sure you're super close to your mics, or maybe we can turn them up a little bit. Maddie.
Yes.
And Liam.
Here.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we will move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so I would take a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the February 3rd, 2021 and February 10th, 2021 in your packets as presented, barring any errors or omissions. Beth, thank you. Lindsay, second. All right, any discussion? All right, so we will roll through this again. Candy.
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Jen. Yes. Susanna.
Yes.
Thank you. Angela? Yes. Beth?
Yes.
Maura?
Yes.
I vote yes. Volley?
Yes.
Maddie?
Yes.
Liam?
Yes.
And Jeremy?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, adjustments to the agenda?
Yes, we have a couple. We want to table 16A. We're not ready to go into the executive session. And then we also want to move 12G, the board discussion around the educator stress survey, to right after 10C.
Okay. All right, so we will move on to 6, good news and recognition. So this evening, the only item we have under there is a report from our student rep.
Right. Well, the senior class is having a winter carnival tomorrow at Pineland Farms, and that'll be cross-country skiing, sledding, fat tire biking, and ice skating. And speaking of the senior class, Freeport High School's guidance department has been sending out different local scholarship opportunities, and also has a website too, like a table with all the scholarships, an overview, and details on that. And if you have a chance to drive down by Shaw's, there's a banner congratulating the Freeport High School mock trial team for state champions, and they'll be going to the nationals in May, I believe. So Model UN had their first practice on Monday, and unified basketball will be starting again soon. There's an opportunity, so this is independent of Freeport, but there's an opportunity for FHS students to participate in the 2021 Engineers Week Expo, and it's the biggest engineering outreach for students in Maine, and it'll be virtual on February 27th, so I believe this Saturday, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And Chris Cassidy, who went to space for twice, I believe, will be speaking there, and also Paige Brown, the CEO of Windborne Systems. So that's just something to keep in mind. The PTSO will be organizing the teacher dinner for the conference evenings of March 11th and 18th. And due to the COVID health protocols, they'll only be taking monetary donations this year and then purchasing from a local restaurant. And there's also currently a fundraiser at the high school to collect items for Maine Needs until this Friday. And it's kind of a class competition, the advisory with the most items of food or just items collected will win a hot chocolate bar. So I don't have much for other schools. Freeport Middle School, there's once again a homework club after school, and the science club is having a 4-week Lego STEM/STEAM challenge going on, and they're completing a set of building challenges to, kind of integrating problem solving and also just creativity to work with that. So I don't have anything else to mention. I don't think there's much going on with sports right now, but yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you for the update. All right, so we are up to number 7 on our agenda, our first public comment period. So 2 opportunities for public comment, one right here and one at the end of the agenda. If you would like to speak, you can do so here in person. I don't think we have anybody joining us today in person, but do we have anybody online? No. If someone is listening in and interested in the second public comment, you can join the Zoom link on the agenda, and that is where you would have the opportunity to participate in our next public comment. So moving on, we will move on to reports from the superintendent.
Thank you. I'll just start out by reporting the resignations. We have Megan Sweat, a DCS math teacher, and that will be effective at the end of the school year. And we have one more retirement to report, and that is for Beth Daniels, who is currently a remote learning teacher. And then just moving on to COVID updates. Our COVID cases are finally on the decline, which is great news. And RSU 5, we're now at 21 confirmed and 3 probable, for a total of 24 of our students having tested positive since September. And we're now up to 6 staff members testing positive, and so that's a total of 30 positive cases in RSU 5 since September. In the past 14 days, we've had 0 positive student cases district-wide, so that's wonderful. And also, since my last board update, written update to you last week, Freeport has moved from 215 cases to 220. Durham's moved from 98 to 99, and Pownell remains between 20 and 49, and South Freeport is still between 6 and 19. So you can see that we are not increasing even in our communities as much as we previously were. I also want to inform the board that we're planning on stopping our formal screening tool of Frontline beginning Monday. We've been religiously doing this since September. It's very, very time intensive, requiring numerous staff to follow up with students and families every single day in all of our schools. Bonnie and I met with the entire nurse team on Monday, and they support this move as they have seen no evidence that this has prevented cases in our schools. And so what we'll be moving to instead is just a daily text message to families that will say something like, this is your daily reminder to do your screening text, and we will no longer ask you to report the completed screen check. And again, we'll just keep reminding people to keep their sick kids home and call the school when the absence is related to COVID symptoms. And we'll just do that every day. We believe that this switch will now allow our staff to use their time much more effectively elsewhere, especially as we are bringing more and more students back to school 5 days a week. So we just feel like that time will be better used. On Monday, we provided all families at Mass Landing and Morris Street the options of students returning to school 5 days a week. On 2.5 of these days, it's a half-day program. On March 15th, families will have the option to move to 5 full days a week of full-day programming, and we'll be able to do that because of our partnership with Wolf Neck Farm. So another 70 kids at Mass Landing School and 75 at Moore Street began receiving more instruction this past Monday. On Monday at DCS, all second graders return to 5 days a week of learning. On next Monday, we are planning on bringing back all third and fourth graders at DCS. And by March 15th, I'm thrilled to report that all of our pre-K to fifth grade families who want 5 days a week of learning instruction will be able to have it. We are also close to having plans created where we can bring back our middle school students 5 days a week. We still have some transportation issues that we're working to overcome, but I guess I just really want to assure the board that since September 8th, the administrative team, our leadership teams in schools have continued to reflect and refine existing plans while working to keep our staff and students safe. Not 1 minute do I believe that we've been satisfied with the status quo, and we won't be satisfied with the status quo until we have all of our students back to school 5 days a week. I'm extremely proud of the work that every employee in RSU 5 has done to keep our learning and working environment safe and our students learning. Our focus has been and will continue to be on what is best for our kids. We know that this pandemic has required remote learning. We have also learned that this is less than ideal for the majority of our kids, so we want them back in school. As you know, Dr. Shaw does weekly updates on COVID, usually on Tuesdays, and he is now currently reporting out how the vaccination deployment is going. And I just want to remind the board and the audience that's listening that our educators are part of the 1B that the state is currently in at the moment, but within the 1B, they are prioritizing, and they're still focused on the adults 70 and older, and then they will be beginning to vaccinate the adults that are 65 and older, and then they will move to more of the frontline workers that will include the educators. So we're hearing that probably by April that we will be having our educators get the vaccine. We also have received an update from Commissioner Macon, and she just wanted to remind us that even if we have our staff vaccinated, it's not going to mitigate needing to wear the mask and continuing with the physical distancing. And I think for all of the schools throughout the state, that's the one that everybody's trying to share ideas and get creative around. And we're just hopeful that Maine will continue to receive more vaccines and that we will be vaccinating our educators, hopefully even before April gets here. And then finally, I just wanted to kind of give a quick equity update. Planning continues for our March 12th Professional Learning Day. That will be, that day will be partially focused on the equity work. The rest of the day will be given to the staffs for planning purposes. All staff district-wide are signed up for one of the 4 sessions that will be offered throughout the day. All the sessions will be the same, but you just don't want to do that kind of work in like one big group. This will allow our staff to have some shared common understanding of the equity work, which is being facilitated by the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium. Administrators are also sharing ideas at our A-team meetings of what they are doing for professional development in their schools and in their departments to advance the equity work. And we still are planning to have some learning opportunities for the board later this spring. And as Liam has said, if you get a chance to drive by Shaw's, that huge banner is out there congratulating our FHS mock team for being our state champions, and we're hoping that soon they'll be our national champions. And so that concludes my report for tonight. Thank you.
Maddie.
Thanks, Becky. Could you just give us a highlight a sentence or two of what those 4 sessions are about? Are they a review of what we've learned about our district, or is it a training module? What will that look like?
It's a little bit of both of those. So there will be for the staff, a brief overview of what the most recent audit showed with the recommendations. And then we will move into a session on just really looking at our own biases, and I would call that more the new learning piece.
Vali.
I just want to give a quick thanks to the entire administrative team for working so hard to provide 5-day instruction to as many students as possible. And I'm delighted that all K-5 will be going to school 5 days a week by the 15th of the next month. That is a huge undertaking, and it's a huge success. And I do receive calls from other districts asking, how do you guys do it? So I want everyone to know that you guys are leaders in this area, and that you're doing a great job, and other people are looking. So thank you.
Thank you for that acknowledgement, and a lot of that work has fallen to the people that are in the audience right here tonight. So it is a big shout out to their creative thinking.
I got a little emotional when you said that all pre-K through 5 would be back 5 days. Like, that's incredible and so exciting. So thank you to all the work that's come in from everybody. All right. So I think we are up to administrator reports, and there's only one on the docket for this evening, finance. Rick's just looking at me like, that's you.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have a lot to tell you with regard to the current budget. We see, again, you're in very good shape. I have very high hopes that you're going to have a robust and healthy undesignated fund balance at the end of the year, primarily because most of the expenditures that are incurring somewhat in the COVID and the ESSER funds. I mean, we continue obviously to expend money for normal salaries and benefits, those kinds of things. But the op tempo again is a little bit slower than it otherwise normally would be. So again, you've had a really fairly mild winter. It's only been cold the last month. So again, we have a lot of high hopes about what we're going to look like at the end of the fiscal year. Now, of course, I can't tell you, or it would be foolish to try to forecast what that would be, because things happen as they normally do, without regard to our plans or budgets that we put into place. Absolutely, if we stop spending today, didn't spend another dime, I could tell you exactly how much money you have left over, but that's not realistic. So, but again, the trends are very good to have, again, a robust fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. We're working on, obviously, continuing to refine the FY22 budget. We talk about it a lot, and as well we should. You're going to hear some more presentations tonight from some of the directors. I have so far been very impressed, very relieved of the budgeting process to date. I think this is going to be another one of those years where, for you folks at least, that it's going to be fairly routine. Obviously, it's my first year here, and I don't know exactly what things are going to progress, how they're going to progress. But again, I think we're on top of it. We certainly have no particular difficulties with regard to putting the documents together. And again, I'm very encouraged by the whole process to this point. If you don't have it, unless there are questions, that concludes my presentation.
Any questions for Rick? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, board comments and committee reports. So first on here is the board information exchange and agenda requests. So Wanted to open it up to any board members if they had any items. Maddie?
I forgot to bring my notes, but I just wanted to let you know that I did listen in on February 17th to the Maine Arts in Education Advocacy Day. It was a long title. And it was great. Governor Mills recorded an address where she's calling for the month of March to be the Arts in Education Day. I think this is the first year of that happening. So that was great. Pender Macon, our education commissioner, also came and spoke. There's also a student panel. And one theme that I noticed and made me feel really grateful for what we have in this district is that they're calling, Commissioner Macon and others are calling for ensuring that arts teachers are not used in other capacities. And in other districts, that is happening. Arts is sort of being considered secondary, and they're using arts teachers to fill in where needed. But they made the point that teachers in the arts are specifically trained to teach in the arts, and they should be used as such. And it just made me feel grateful for the support that we have for the arts in our district. And I'm sure there's more that I have in my notes on my desk at home that I forgot to bring, but it was nice, and I encourage you guys to come next year.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Gender requests? I know I
have
sent out.
Michelle here in the.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I had an opportunity to attend a couple of DOE things, and then I had a couple of MSBA things I wanted to share too. So I'll try to keep it brief, but it seemed like there was a lot going on this month. I attended a DOE session held by the school safety center about behavioral threat assessments. And I'm happy to forward that information on to our safety committee. It was supposed to be recorded, but I haven't gone back to see if they posted the recording online. But basically, DOE is statewide going to be encouraging. They've been doing a pilot program where they had 3 school districts implement this model of where school-based teams gather information and then use a decision tree to determine if a threat is transient or substantive. So basically, this is like if a threat comes forward in school and a threat being defined as harm to a student's self or others. So they've been piloting that in 3 districts around the state and are going to be encouraging, like I said, other districts to adopt this model too. So it's just something that's coming down the pike, and it was interesting to hear them talk about this model and how it can be implemented to help keep students safe. So that was one thing I wanted to share. And then sorry, I'm just like flipping through all my notes. I wanted to share also the MSBA board meeting earlier this month. We had an opportunity to hear from the chairs of the Education Committee. That's Representative Brennan and Senator Daughtry, and they were able to outline, there's a lot of priorities that they have for this session. There's like 10 of them, so I won't go into all that now, but if the board's interested, I can summarize them in an email. But they just went over, what they're going to be focusing on this legislative session. And you can go to MSBA, the MSBA website now and get a list of where the legislative committee, I'm not on the legislative committee, but it reports to the MSBA board of directors, and they have been going through the process of deciding whether they'll support or oppose or be neutral on certain bills. So you can find that list already there. Again, like a really long list, so I won't go into all that. I know the board has an interest in legislation, so that would be the best place to take a look. And if you had any questions about specific bills, I could get more information for you or tell you what it is I know. Another DOE meeting that I had an opportunity to attend was an effort headed by Beth Lambert, where they invited stakeholders in public education to discuss how to support each other in equity work. And happy to share that with the Equity Committee. I don't know how, well, I got on that list because I had attended the Racial Equity Institute training a couple of years ago. And so they invited anyone who'd participated in that training. If anyone else is interested, I'm sure they'd probably welcome others to join the group. It's a really impressive group of people who have a really pretty deep knowledge base in equity work. So that was exciting to sort of be in a group of folks to talk about. One thing I did want to share with the board was that one of the experts was there who was there was from an organization called the Atlantic Black Box Project. And what really fascinated me about this is they said they encourage communities to engage students in the work of historical recovery and learning itself as a process of recovery and civic engagement. So the idea being that through teaching history to our students and the true history of New England, that we can engage them in talking about equity and how it still impacts, how we still see impacts of it today. So I thought that was that organization was really interesting. And the last thing I'll share, sorry this is so long, I attended the regional MSBA meeting recently with our peers from other Cumberland County school districts, and they shared sort of some of the things, the challenges and things that they've been encountering. And a common theme seems to be, you know, I think a lot of the things that we've seen, staffing challenges. Cape Elizabeth said that they've requested for next year in their budget to have a long-term substitute, a permanent rotating substitute. And other school districts have hired long-term substitutes to try to fill in the gaps. So I think a common challenge that we share. And then another one was really needing extra supports for social work and guidance counselors and things like that, and the ongoing challenge of students needing more support during this time and school districts trying to figure out how to fund that. So lots more good information from all those, but I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Maura. You've been busy. Thank you for all that great info and obviously all that time you spent in those variety of sessions. Those are, I think, great, and I encourage folks to, you know, take a look. That is, the legislative idea is something that we have talked about as a board, and you know, if the MSBA has got sort of a running list of bills that are relate to education and an easy way to look at them, and I think that's a great takeaway for us to look into further. So thank you for that. The only thing I was going to add was, based on our last board meeting, the decision was made to write a letter opposing the proposed resolution for the Androscoggin County Commissioners around not requiring masks in Androscoggin County, leaving it up to the discretion of individuals. That meeting was last Wednesday night. That resolution did not pass. It failed. 1 in favor and 6, the other 6 commissioners were all opposed. There were no alternative resolutions that received a second to even get on the floor for discussion. So it was a long discussion. There was a lot of different pieces to it, but at the end of the day, the commission, it was interesting because some of the commissioners felt like it was health-wise not the right choice, and other commissioners felt like you couldn't really tell if they felt that it was medically appropriate to require masks or if it was helpful, but they felt that they didn't have the authority to override the governor's mandate anyway. Even if they felt like masks shouldn't be required, they weren't the body that could do that for them. So either way, it didn't pass. So that was good, because that was our desired outcome from that resolution. So I'm sure that there will be more to come on that, as there's, like I said, a bunch of other things that were discussed, but for now that resolution failed. So any other comments, board updates, requests? Jen.
I didn't bring my notes from the Region 10 meeting last night, but one thing that did get a lot of discussion was the planned HVAC program that they're talking about and trying to kind of plan to get that off the ground. They're running into some issues with having space, for one thing. And another issue that was brought up was that they really want to make sure that their recruitment is kind of set up and in place before they do a lot, because they said, you know, they could spend all this time creating a program and then not have the students who are interested. So it was a great discussion, and a lot of people seem to know a lot, obviously more about it than I do. But it looks like it's something that they're, you know, really, really interested in, and are going to take some really thoughtful steps in creating that program. So that was a good positive, and they really are working on the budget too, which I know is a big issue. So, and the thing, they're hoping to get some more money from the next wave of CARES, which I didn't realize, but the technical schools, according to the superintendent there, did not get any money from the original CARES money.
Interesting. I think you can use the pronoun we now instead of they are working. You are working, right? Yeah. And thank you for that work. All right. Anything else on that? All right. So then we will move over to strategic communications report. Candy, you moved. Sorry.
Yes, that's all right. Well, Rick came to work with us just to look over all the budget papers and communication kind of thing. And we suggested a few changes for the booklet that went out last year for the one that's going out this year. Some minor changes, and making a few changes on the special education page, and a few thoughts about how to highlight increases and decreases in the budget. And the other thing we talked about was the student exit survey. We worked on compiling all the results of that, and that will come to you. I don't know how soon, but that will come to you soon to see the results of the exit survey.
I think that's on the April 14th.
Okay, April.
Okay. Usually we go from the committee update to the committee review for policy, but we're just going to do the policy committee update, and then we're going to jump back to the policy review a little bit later. So.
I turned it off, sorry. In the bright pink, you'll see the policies we looked at. One, the Board of Directors member orientation is coming to you for the second read. A few we did with no substantive changes, and then the one about reporting child abuse and neglect will be asked to be rescinded because it'll go as a procedure. So that's what those are tonight. And just also wanted to say it was very nice that Cynthia told us that we really only have 4 left that have to be reviewed, which is amazing. And I guess we're still waiting for some feedback about Title IX that we'll be looking at. And there was also a request to make sure we kind of look again at wellness and mental health. So that was from the policy committee.
Great. Any questions for Candy on that? All right, so we are up to the adjustment in the agenda, so we're going to jump down to 12G.
Thank you, and I have my phenomenal team with me tonight, so that any questions you may have, we can direct it to any one of those two. So I'll just do a brief overview. We gave the stress survey out at the end of November, and then we did it again at the end of, at the beginning of February 10th. We feel like we had an excellent response rate, 80% of the educators on the pre-survey, and then 76% on the post. We had 6 questions that asked the teachers to rank their stress level on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest stress level. District-wide stress levels went down on all questions, and the vast majority of the comments reflected that they felt like the strategies that we had employed have been helpful and effective. And our plan is to continue with these same strategies for the rest of the year. And that kind of concludes my brief overview, and then I'm happy to take comments or questions from the board members.
Beth.
I just have a question how, I think there was one comment in here that was talking about bringing more kids back and still, so we have like the 5-day-a-week kids, but then there are still the kids at home on some of those days off, and that the kids that are in school are sitting through double lesson type thing. So I'm wondering, how will that be handled when you get, as more kids are coming back? Like, how is that going to transition for teachers to, be able to? I'm not sure.
So this is why I have my crew with me tonight. I think that varies. So I think let's start with the simplest, which is PES. And I'm looking at Lisa, and my understanding is that it's 5 days of new learning, just like, pre-COVID at PES. But then I'll have Emily come up and explain the more complicated one that's happening at Mass Landing and Moore Street, where it's not 5 days of necessarily new learning. And then I think that Will has the hybrid of the two possibly, and I'll have him come up and speak to that.
So in all our classrooms, even from day one in the school year, we had kids who did repeat days. And those kids varied from children of staff members to children who are significantly behind. What we've been able to do is increase the number. So in our building, our rooms are capped at 13. So we've been able to increase, if a room started at 10 at the beginning of the year, we've made gradual invitations to get to that 13 and then done cycles of invitations, so kids having access. What we've tried not to do is invite kids for whom duplicate instruction does not have value. With the exception of, there were some classrooms that had rooms that parents were just like, we're really struggling. We had the space, we didn't yet have wolf neck programming and this half day. Since we have that, now we're in the position that the kids who are double day kids either really benefit from the repeated instruction. And so teachers essentially are kind of teaching with that in mind, or they're kids who, when repeat instruction starts, it's almost like what a lot of staff members' kids did early on, was you're taking your independent work and you've got a workspace and a partner and you're engaging that work. But I will say our teachers have hit it out of the park in terms of thinking of ways to partner kids creatively, doing some enrichment work where it can benefit kids. And that's been the load, right? Like the challenge of it's always, rosters are changing really every 2 to 3 weeks. And that's what we've used some of that additional planning time for, is like, okay, who's in the room now? What does that mean? But it's really designed for that. The kids who are there duplicate days would benefit from additional opportunities for practice and instruction.
It was a little hard to hear specifically the question. You're talking about what we're going to be looking at moving forward as we get to children coming in.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of lost my train of thought, but I was thinking about, so you're going to bring back all the kids 5 days that want to come, but there may be some that don't. And so how does that kind of work with, if you're doing the synchronous, or things like, I guess they're not at elementary level doing synchronous, right? So that would be more at the middle school.
6 through 8, we do the synchronous. So, well, that's a slightly different question than what I heard. And so I'm not quite sure how to word this, but we're not really saying, would you like to stay home still? We're saying school is now 5 days a week. And, 1 or 2 parents have asked that question about, well, I'm a little uneasy about numbers, but when we explain to them that if their child were to remain on 2 or 3 days a week, that is the day the class would be the biggest, because on that particular day, one more person is there. That, and we talk about the evidence of what has been going on in the schools, for the most part, parents who've had that concern have come to determine that, okay, that makes sense. So we are not anticipating we're not offering, you can stay in hybrid if you want. What we're saying is we're moving, school is coming back to what it was, well, not quite to what it was, but school is going to be 5 days a week, with all the sort of safety and security aspects and part of that, but that's what school will then be. If a parent was to say, well, I am adamant that my child's only going to come 2 or 3 days a week, we're not offering specific, we will try to support them, but we are not at that point offering the same level that we have been currently. It's just beyond what the teachers can accommodate.
Thank you for clarifying. I mean, I understand that completely. It was just a question of when you say all who would like to be back 5 days a week are invited to come back. That doesn't tell me everybody must come back.
So this is why we have our trusty team here, because there are unique challenges to all of our schools, and I think that we may have a few of those families that I just described at Moore Street and Mass Landing, but I'll have those two. I'll have Julie and Emily come up.
Yeah, I'm only speaking for DCS in that regard. Okay. I'm going to speak for MLS too.
Sorry, I misunderstood your original question. So all families have the option for 5 days of programming. We do not have new explicit learning as we would in a traditional year 5 days a week. So what teachers have done is worked to compact 2 lessons into a day of instruction, being intentional about what's assigned as independent work, right? So students are either doing that at home, or as of Monday, doing it in school in a half-day program. And as of March 15th, we'll be doing it in school in a half-day program and then going to the farm, or starting their day at the farm and then coming and doing their practice work. We have about, I think this morning it was maybe 14 families that are saying thanks but no thanks. And I will say most of those are parents who have a parent at home or have hired help earlier in the year, and they're committed to the model that they have, and they're supporting at-home practice work. And maybe it's that their student went to Wolf Neck Farm every summer of their childhood and they're like, we're good. Or maybe it just doesn't work for their family, or they've invested in another child care provider. Does that answer more fully?
Yeah, I guess so. It was just I was wondering what the kids that didn't opt to come back 5 days a week, the way that Becky explained it. So I wasn't sure, across the board that was, so yeah.
Lally.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, this is a great set of responses, and I really enjoy reading the comments because it gives me an insight on what exactly is going on. My struggle was that I wasn't necessarily able to tell from which school I was hearing that voice that I was reading on the paper. So my question is about the middle school. I was really curious when you said that you're moving in the direction of bringing middle school students 5 days a week. A lot of the stress that is described here from apparently middle school teachers and high school teachers is still the need to juggle the synchronous and the in-person learning at the same time. So I'm really excited to hear that may end, at least for some of the teachers, namely at the middle school level, if you go to 5 days a week. Can you give us a little more information about that hope?
Okay.
And you don't have to get into anything that you're not willing to commit, but timeline, general terms.
Yep. I'm going to have Will and Ray come up and speak to that, because I feel like they have both told me when they think they might be potentially ready. I mean, we have some transportation things, but can you just talk about what it'll look like? Because it's going to, again, we have very distinct buildings and populations, so it's not going to look the same at Durham as it does at Freeport Middle School.
Sure. I mean, this meeting isn't live or anything, right? I mean, it's not broadcast or anything like that.
Yeah, we're not recording this. You're fine. Go ahead.
Oh, live, you say. So, sure. We are phasing in. And part of the challenge for us, again, each school is different, but for us, transportation is the big one in terms of numbers of students on buses. And families have been amazing about contributing their part to helping transport so that they can free up a spot on a bus for someone who has that no option. But so we've just redone parent survey on transportation capacity. And if we just did a second wave of that for those who didn't respond the first time, because that is a big part of the work for us. Assuming we can get that piece sorted out, I think Becky mentioned at the beginning. So we are 5 days a week of second grade starting this past Monday, third and fourth grade starting 5 days a week next Monday. So we're going to just sort of let that breathe for a minute while we're also figuring out this transportation aspect. Then we have not quite got a date yet figured out, because we're debating, do we bring in one grade or do we just bring all of 6-8 at the same time? You know, how much can we sort of expand and grow into it? Are there new norms that we're going to have to sort of really flex to? And is there benefit to like working a week with this next round of numbers and then another week with the next round of numbers? But our hope is to have all of 6-8 in before April 1st. So that's what we're kind of working towards. And then I can say to you that teachers that I've spoken with, what you're describing from that feedback, Valley, is spot on. They've worked incredibly hard with the synchronous, but it still is incredibly difficult to follow up with students who are home that day, to navigate how can I convey this important subject so it's engaging and rigorous in class but not unreachable online, without compromising it too greatly. How do we do these labs? How do we do these sort of hands-on work that is part of our teaching and learning model? So it really is like doing parallel jobs. So whilst there's some nervousness about bringing back all kids, there's also this sense of like, on one hand, that's a challenge, but then what will be offsetting that is to be able to know that everybody's getting the same thing each day, and that will allow us to be more responsive to students, which feels, more satisfying and more familiar. So that's kind of the offset. I'm not sure if I answered your question or not. I think I went off track a bit.
Yes, you have. This is great.
All right.
Thank you.
And we'll have Ray speak to Freeport Middle School.
I don't think I was quite ready to speak on this tonight, but it's definitely something that we've been working on as a school, because we really, feel strongly about if we can do it safely, we want to do it. We're at a point where I think our staff fully believes in our plan. We have a kind of one major hurdle to get over, and we're working through that. And, I'm optimistic that we can get over that, but the last thing I want to do is overpromise and underperform. I'd rather be a little hesitant now and say we're working on it. And if we can get there, that's our goal. We feel good about our plan if we can get over our one hurdle. And then we would be there. I think our time frame would, with that plan, line up similar to Durham's. But Will and I have talked about it. We're not going to try intentionally to do them at the same time. We're going to do them when both schools are ready.
And Ray, you also expect that when that transition happens, the stress level from your teaching staff will decrease because of the shed requirement of doing both synchronous and in-person.
That is the selling point.
Yeah. Okay. That means yes. Thank you.
It would not be the same, willingness for staff to try this plan. That is a little bit different. It's definitely not something I've seen others do, but it's definitely a little different. And, that is the selling point.
Maddie.
Thank you for this. Am I so much louder than everyone else? Wow, I feel really loud. So I think we got 67 comments in our packet. Is that all the comments? Great, thank you for letting us see those. I tried to sort of chunk those up in themes. I was grateful to see the general trend go down in terms of stress level. And yeah, I mean, I sort of marked it in terms of like overwhelmingly positive comment or overwhelmingly negative comment or mixed comment, and I agree with you that it's more positive than not. Even so, sort of chunking it up into themes, there's still some similar themes, which I don't think we could possibly ask our administrators to comment on every single theme here. I am hopeful that when we do building reports throughout the rest of the year, I would love for our principals to comment on some of the themes that they see in their data and what they're doing to address those concerns. I think the questions that Beth and Vale have asked speak to the number one theme that I saw, which was sort of around the logistics of a constantly changing and evolving model. I don't know that I see any way around that, but that's obviously a big stressor. And then the second most common theme that I saw was the stress, just mental, social, emotional, not just of students, but of staff, burnout. And I would love to, if you have something to share now, that'd be great, but I would be fine just knowing that we'll hear about that later in the year, what sort of really thoughtful and meaningful reach outs are we making to help our staff navigate their own emotional stress and the fact that they are caretakers for our kids who we know are dealing with unprecedented levels of stress. And then just to mention the other themes I saw, technology, just continued evolving need of staying up to date with technology changes, some safety issues, planning time I saw as a theme, but nowhere near as much as we saw in the fall. And then this wasn't a theme so much, but there were a few comments in here that, felt like a big oof to me that make it sound like that we don't care, that the administration and that the board doesn't care about our teachers. And that always hurts. I don't feel that any one of us sitting here don't care, but if that is somehow the perception, we have some work to do there. I'm hopeful that with meaningful reach outs around wellness, that we can make some gains there. So not necessarily questions, more comments, and hoping that that's how we can continue to pay attention to this throughout the rest of this school year, is by hearing from our principals when they report to us next.
Thanks, Maddie. Jen.
So, in reading through all the comments and hearing Will talk about, the synchronous, and Ray talk about the synchronous learning kind of going away, being kind of a huge push into why their teachers are really interested in having their kids back 5 days a week. It just leaves me to wonder where we are with the high school. And that's, I sat in, I was in the kitchen while my daughter was in a synchronous class today at home. And, it's literally sounds like a meeting that's been planned for like a month, and they're doing this every day. So I was really impressed with what they're doing. I mean, very impressed. But it definitely leaves me to wonder if that's where a lot of the comments are coming from, is the high school level, where they don't particularly see an end in sight. And so I'm wondering if there's any indication of when and if it's at all possible to make any movement at the high school level.
So I'll have Jen come up and talk about that, but you could see that through the comments, the themes you're seeing and the tension, right? And there's tension when you're right, when we're ever evolving. And the antidote for that is not to be ever evolving, right? Which is what I just reported out in my superintendent's report that we haven't done since September the 8th. And we're not planning on doing that, but we acknowledge that the stress that causes, but we also feel like this is what's best for our kids, right? Because we know that the remote learning is not great. And we knew when we went into September that we had to start slow to make sure that we were safe. And so there's just a real tension there about, like, what do we do around those kind of things? But we've kind of committed to accepting that causes stress, and what are some things that we can do to mitigate that, which have been, I don't know that we have new strategies, Maddie, but I'm happy to have principals report out as they're doing reports about how they're giving, more planning time and reaching out to staff and doing more around wellness and things like that. I think the teachers have been very grateful for the snow days and time like that. But Jen, why don't you talk about it? Because I think that when we have talked about that, the high school kind of, first of all, has the most students, so it creates the biggest challenges. They're the older kids that seem to be getting sick the most, when we're having cases. So we continue to work to bring more kids back, but I think our thinking was it probably wouldn't really happen until September. But go ahead if you found a more creative idea today since I last talked to you.
We have lots of creative ideas. This is something that we are absolutely wrestling with, spent a lot of time today talking with the guidance team, just trying to brainstorm, talking with the leadership team, talking with individual teachers it really is about our sheer numbers and our space. And so just to, kind of give you a perspective of the room that we're sitting in right now, normally we have 600 students, we have 2 lunches, we divide them to have about 300 kids that can fit into this room in a normal day, and now we're at 50 total with the adults in here. So that's something, and it is challenging. The students have done an amazing job following our health and safety protocols throughout the day. Lunch is the most challenging, where they want to sit in groups and they want to sit with their friends, and they have to put their mask on as soon as they're done eating. And so to think about lunch is probably our number one challenge, even with, the support of the board to have open campus for juniors and seniors has made a significant difference. And so, thinking about what the hallways look like when 600 kids come out at the same time, and how do we stagger that? And so I don't have a great answer right now, except that I was standing in the middle of the cafeteria on Tuesday afternoon thinking, how the heck are we going to do this? But we are hopeful and thinking about ways that we can do that. We're unique in the fact that a huge number of our seniors will leave at the beginning of May for senior projects. So does that provide some opportunity for some more space? Can we get creative when the weather gets better about where students eat for lunch? And so I think we have to explore these ideas and look at what some possibilities are. And we have some unique scenarios that can help us. Right now, we're just under, right about 10% of our students are here 5 days a week. So we're constantly looking at that. One of the things that we monitor the most, some of the teachers were talking about this week, that March is always a very stressful time for us. We start to look at our days are very short with our seniors. So who are we panicked about? Making sure that they are crossing the finish line. And so, we're looking at making sure that's a top priority for kids who are coming in 5 days a week. Our students on IEPs, our students with 504s. I think what is really challenging is that we're hearing stories about students who are struggling, who are still maintaining good grades, who are still, from the outside look like they're doing okay. And we know that we keep saying it would benefit all of our students to be back 5 days a week. And we're just trying to figure out how we can incrementally do that. So there isn't a great answer right now. I have a couple of ideas of looking at other high schools, of some of the things that they've done to see, if there are some solutions that we can come up with.
And Jen, with the real possibility that the majority of kids are not going to be back 5 days until the fall, fingers crossed, what are we doing for the teachers, right? Because I think the thought is that what we're hearing from, sort of some of the lack of hope we're hearing in some of these comments are from the teachers who don't see that light at the end of the tunnel for the rest of the school year. And what can we do for them to get them there? Because that's where my concern is, right? Like, I think it's great that pre-K through 5 is back and those teachers can focus, and there's still some of the juggling, right? Like Emily said, but it's much more normalized. For these teachers that are likely going to have to do this through June, what can we do for them?
I think it's a great question. And I think some of the things that we've put into place that we're making sure that we are giving as much planning time back. So our teachers used to meet every other day with their PLC team, and now they meet once about every 6 weeks. So they have gained that as planning time. So they have a full 75-minute period every day now, making sure that continues, giving back the meetings after school. So that, for example, today was supposed to be an hour and a half meeting with the departments where they'll be looking at all sorts of things, curriculum and budget. They met for a short amount of time, anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes as a department, and then had the rest of the time to plan either individually or collaboratively. So our leadership team and our department chair team meet every other week and look at the whole overall schedule and see which meetings can we make sure that we're dedicating back to being able to have that as full planning time. So I think some of those things, plus the wellness options that we've continued to offer, our advisories for March are doing Mindful March. So it's not just for the students, but it's for the staff too. So 1 week is about mindful breathing. One week is about mindful activities like standing yoga, just all these small things that we're trying to do. Our operations team has talked a lot about what are small ways to boost morale, bringing in food, little things that we can do. So I think that those are they're certainly not going to be something that's going to alleviate all of the stress. I've had some good conversations this week, like I said, about this is always a stressful job. It's what's so hard is the unknown stress. It's usually stress that we are well equipped to handle. And now it's just like the constant changing, the constant kind of brainstorming and thinking. And I think it's just this awareness and keep talking about what is it that we can do. And our operations team meets every week. So they've talked about it every week. One thing we might do next on the 12th after the equity meeting is therapy dogs coming in for the teachers. So, we're just trying to think outside of the box of what we can do.
Could you tell me, I know you meet with area principals. Are there any high schools in the area that the students are going more days than we are?
No.
I thought Lisbon was back to 4 days a week.
Oh, they're not in my group. Sorry. So it's just the Cumberland County principals that are meeting right now. So my group is, and I guess some of them is further south too. It's a voluntary group. So Falmouth, Yarmouth, Cape, all the Portland schools, South Portland, Gorham, Westbrook, Wyndham. That's pretty much those of us who meet.
Maura.
Thank you for collecting this information, and thanks, Jen, for that description, because reading through the comments, it's still, clear that some of our teachers are still really struggling, and hearing about some of the ways we can continue to support them is so important, I think. And I just want to acknowledge that, that in these responses, there were some really difficult and challenging things, and I want to acknowledge that for those teachers who put that out there. And I hope that they have avenues where they can seek help if they're feeling burned out and they are overwhelmed. But my question that I had was, in saying we were going to continue to implement these strategies through the remainder of the year, I thought that was great. Are we planning to have additional days added in our calendar? So I know previously we had added some early release days that were not on there. Could we consider, or I guess this is a question for Dr. Foley, is that another option that's on the table of adding more days like that to the calendar that are not already in the calendar?
We do not have a suggestion around that. March 31st is an early release day already in the calendar. And so we will use that for either individual planning time or team planning time or, whatever. It will be no new learning, but we don't have other days that we're requesting. If the board would like us to look at that, I'm willing to go back to the team and do that. We have the March 12th day that's coming up. So we have 2 more that are, on the horizon. And we have been giving back quite a bit of our professional learning time that we have in the contract. If you remember, with the last contract, we have 36 meetings a year, and so a lot of that has turned into that kind of time. But if that is the board's request, we're happy to do that.
I would just add for that too, just one thing to consider is, and I have not asked teachers or the leadership team what they think about additional early release days, but one thing that is definitely on our minds is this is our shortest semester 2 ever. Because of going fully remote at the high school, we extended semester 1 an extra week, and we'll be ending the earliest ever, other than last year, because of no snow days. So that's an additional piece of stress for our teachers to make sure that they're really, kind of getting through all of the units that they want to. And so I don't know if missing another day of instruction, especially with the rotating cohorts, would alleviate stress. For some it might, and for others it might cause more.
Maddie?
Yeah, I don't think I would be in favor of that at this point in the year. A number of teacher comments mentioned assessments, and I know at the high school it's already a big stretch. And also, I don't think I would ask that of our families. I wish I had some creative ideas of my own right now, but I guess I'm more interested in the kinds of mental wellness outreaches, the therapy dogs, those sorts of things that will be impactful. I prefer we go that route.
Lindsay?
Thank you, Jen, and thank you guys for this. I think the thing that stood out the most for me, which is ironic because it's sort of my theme, was the equity and realizing that for families and for our teachers, we are really experiencing a discrepancy in equity. The comments, I think there were 2, maybe 3 that stood out that just kind of like jumped off the page to me. And the notes that I made were, those in green are more content and have been since October. And so obviously we have a problem with the cafeteria and the hallways, and yet here we sit in a town that's dying, and we have all this empty storefronts, and I know I'm a little bit of a dreamer, but we have partnered with Wolf Snack, and that's been incredible. LL Bean is not back. Half our storefronts are empty. Azure's empty. Would there be any way, we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And the other thing is we have children languishing. So yes, I read the 2B or the 1B or whatever, and I understand that we're going to vaccinate those that are most likely to get seriously ill and or die. But we have children dealing with major mental health issues. And to me, yes, death is obviously bad, but mental health issues for our young people are also bad and can result in really bad things. Substance abuse, eating disorders, suicide. I know we're all in an impossible situation, but it's a really funny thing to be sitting in a town with all this empty storefront space going, we don't have enough space to bring our kids back. I guess I just need to throw that out there and acknowledge for our teachers and our families, I'm currently one of them, benefiting from a 5-day, feeling guilty for the families that aren't, but I've also got a kid in hybrid. I mean, the inequity is really, it's really incredible. And I guess I just needed to acknowledge that. And to hear Ray say that the selling point is getting rid of synchronous, it's like, we got to be putting our thinking. We have done such brilliant work with Wolf's Neck. I guess I'm always like the dreamer, the visionary, like, how can we get these kids back? How can we take the pressure off our teachers, maybe without the vaccination, with some empty space, with who's back at LL Bean? Would LL Bean ever loan us their space because their people aren't back? And we know how we're doing it. I don't know, like, these kids and our teachers, I just would consider continuing to think. I wish I could bewitch my nose and get us some of those storefronts and get our kids back. I mean, they could be functioning classrooms while they sit there empty. Just a thought. Thanks, guys.
Liam.
One thing that you guys might not, in regards to teachers with assessments at the high school, the College Board the other day made it available to teachers to decide which of 3 testing sessions to do. I believe primarily 1 and 2 are options that teachers currently have, and at the high school they met yesterday to kind of talk about testing date 1 or 2. And of course it does interfere with other things like the senior projects, but a lot of teachers have already opted into the second testing date, which I think gives on average about 3 more weeks to prepare for the AP exam. So that's just something to consider when adding another professional learning day or half day.
Thank you. I mean, I agree with Lindsay in that at the very minimum, our kids and our teachers deserve the brainstorming, right? Like, you know, I think whether we can make it happen or not, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of pieces and parts and logistics that go into all those things, and I'm sure, you know, it just appeared that Wolf Neck was this perfect program that, you know, appeared out of thin air, but I'm sure there was a lot of work in the background to make that happen. But, you know, I think they deserve the effort, right? I mean, we should try. Is there an option, you know? And if there isn't, we can look at them in the face and say, we tried. We looked for every alternative to get, you know, to release some of this stress, to get more kids back, to do it safely. And if we can't, then here's the puppies. I love the therapy dog idea.
Michelle, could I just make a quick comment that as a follow-up to Jen's comments, I don't want people to think that teachers in pre-K 5 and potentially 6-8 are suddenly stress-free because they have kids coming back. It's a whole new different, you still need to see the classrooms that do have students in. So I mean, we have 6 lunches to navigate. The duties, the rotation, the where kids are, where they can sit, cleaning tables and chairs and desks throughout the day, the impact on the teaching and learning model in order to deliver this while children continue with spacing. Yes, they're keen to have children back because they know that's what's right for kids, but I wouldn't want the perception to be out there as like, oh, life gets easier and more back to normal. It is far from normal to have, you know, 16 or 17 children spaced out in face masks and try to teach to them. So that is not quite, it's like, okay, K5's done. It isn't. It's still a big demand each day. So it felt like the conversation was moving on there. Thank you.
And I guess I just want to add that we have talked about different storefronts, you know, Ray explored a lot around that because the middle school, we felt like at one point, I think that we could possibly walk down there. I mean, so I just want to reassure you that there's been plenty of creative brainstorming that's been going on, and will continue to do so and look for solutions. But it is, you know, I know there's a lot of empty storefronts, but you have to think about the transportation, the staffing, you know, the supervision of high school students. I mean, all of those things. And so those are all, I want to assure you that we have talked about those empty storefronts.
And I think just knowing that is important, right? Like, oh, yeah, that's good. Good. Maddie.
I did specifically want to ask about the Harrisicot Inn, because I had read somewhere that they were making their ballroom available for students on remote days because they have Wi-Fi. Is that something we're doing?
Ray, you kind of explored that, and there were just barriers that, we weren't able to overcome, but we have wonderful partners in town.
No, I mean, Harrisicot Inn was great to work with in August and like trying to plan how we would fit. And for us, the barrier became, the amount of time to get the kids, because busing, doesn't really work. But then the walking and the lost instructional time back and forth. And it was easier to move the art classroom if we had 20 kids in the classroom than walk the kids to, the Harrisicot Inn. But I mean, they were definitely willing, but it just doesn't quite fit our schedule, and it created more staffing issues than it helped out. But
Did you have your hand up, Jen? You didn't? Okay. Are we good online? Okay.
With even adding the Wolf Neck and the half-day at Mass Landing and Moore Street, our transportation is strained. We have advertised, we continue to advertise, and so, we now have the barrier of trying to figure out the middle school transportation. And so, that really is a huge hurdle of, okay, so maybe we could get these 2 stores, which will create 2 more classrooms, but just think about how many additional classrooms we really need to bring all of the high school students back. And so that's where a lot of the challenges are. There, it comes back to staffing issues and finding enough bus drivers, enough supervisors. And it doesn't mean that one of our phenomenal administrators tonight, as they're trying to sleep in camp, won't come up with a brilliant idea, and we'll consider that tomorrow when somebody calls me up, or if I think of an idea, they know that I'm not shy about throwing something out there. So we will continue to look for ways to bring our kids back, because we know the impact, and I appreciate your comment, Lindsay, about the inequity. And we did, in September, we were kind of like, no, we're going to kind of give the same thing, with the exception of some of our students with disabilities and our staff members, the same programming. And we quickly moved to where we can do it and bring them back, we're going to do it. And we knew that the downside of that was that we were creating an inequitable system, and we've tried to be really thoughtful about that and look at kids and the kids that, are hurting the most, that aren't reaching benchmark. So it is probably the biggest challenge in all of our careers.
Maddie.
Last one. Thank you, Becky. I get how irritating it is for people to have creative ideas no, I mean, it's great, but those of us with the creative ideas aren't the ones doing all the logistical stuff, right? So it's never as easy as the idea giver hopes it will be. That said, I just wonder if we are too quick to dismiss the idea of what Harrisicot Inn was offering, because what I had read more recently was that it was a possible venue for students who were at home on their at-home days. And I wonder if it might be worth looking into this as a possible sort of a learning academy kind of a situation. Of course, there would be staffing issues, but maybe if we focused on high schoolers or older kids as a place to be, to do homework. I don't know, because when I think about what teenagers are going through, it's that lack of seeing their friends. lack of time together, that I think is just heartbreaking for so many of them and for us as we watch. So it's my last creative idea of the night. I don't promise, but.
I was going to say, do you promise? Never make that promise. Any other comments, questions?
Michelle?
Jeremy?
Just a quick one that, like everybody here, pretty much everybody in society right now, COVID fatigue and general burnout was definitely a theme throughout here too. And just, want to kind of acknowledge the number of times that administrators and building administrators were mentioned as being supportive, and that's really amazing. Thank you guys, and let's not forget that we don't want to burn these guys out anymore also, because they've been pulling rabbits out of a hat since March. So just kind of keep that in mind as we do this unending calculus during this time. But, okay, thank you.
They can play with the puppies.
Yes, extra puppies.
It's the best idea I've heard yet. I love it. Okay, so now we will. Did you want to release anyone?
Oh yes, that the principals that were just here for that survey, are the directors. They're free to go.
Okay. Go brainstorm.
Yeah, go think of a few creative ideas.
All right, so we will jump back to the policy review. Cynthia.
Hi, good evening. Tonight we have a policy before you for second read, and it's the new board of directors member orientation. I do have a correction to make before you do vote on it. We did add at our last policy committee meeting, letter E. That's the only new thing in here. Each new board member will be paired with a mentor from the board. What is not reflected from our last board meeting is that the last paragraph should be struck out. So when you vote on it, it would be with the understanding that that last paragraph that says all board members will be involved in the orientation session. Remember, we talked about striking that out completely. So that just was neglected to be taken out. And so we want a motion for those two changes.
All right, so motion for consideration and approval of the following policy second read, BIA, new board of directors member orientation. Jen, was that a motion or a question? Okay, motion. Second, Vali, thank you. Any questions on that? Are you all set, Susanna?
Yeah, I'm all set. I was just raising my hand to motion. That's all.
Oh, okay. I can't see you, so it's unlikely I'm going to call on you as the motion.
I just felt like it. I know.
But thank you. I appreciate the effort. Okay, so we will run through the roll call for that second read policy. Lindsay?
Yes.
Jen? Yes. Susanna?
Yes.
Angela? Yes. Beth?
Yes.
Maura?
Yes.
I vote yes. Vali?
Yes.
Maddie?
Yes.
Liam?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
And Candy?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then for first read tonight, as Candy mentioned earlier, we have a procedure, or excuse me, we're hoping this will become a procedure after tonight. We have a policy JLF-R, which the R indicates it's a procedure. So it does have there is a policy, just JLF. And this is about the procedures for reporting child abuse. And in here, I wanted to reflect what we're going to make as a change in the paragraph B. Paragraph B really is just clarifying what's in paragraph A. So that would be the change to what's existing, but we are asking that we vote to rescind this tonight, and then we will be putting it on the right side on that policy page. It's interesting because I don't know if you remember when we brought the JLF, the actual policy, well, what should be the actual policy before you, they're very similar.
The policy, the JLF is much longer, and it's very detailed in the investigations, the confidentiality, but it has a lot of this very same language in it. Just to refresh you in case you didn't know that. So I'm just asking that we rescind this tonight.
So we're getting rid of the procedure altogether?
No, we're going to keep this, right? Rescind it. If you look at the minutes, it says that we are asking to, oh, it's not on that pink sheet, it's on the other one. We're going to just move it over to the procedure side. We're going to keep it as a procedure, and we're going to add this paragraph to it, but we're just rescinding it from the actual policy because we have a policy that this would go with. Am I saying that?
So
I'm making it more
are there
confusing.
two policies right now and one we're
Yes.
making a procedure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Great. Sorry.
So do I have a motion for consideration and approval to rescind the following policy, JLFR, reporting child abuse and neglect administrative procedure? Lindsay and Beth, thank you. Any questions for Cynthia on this? Everybody good online? Yep. Okay. All right, so we'll start, what did I start with last time? Jen? Yes. Susanna?
Yes.
Angela? Beth?
Yes.
Maura?
Yes.
I vote yes. Vali?
Yes.
Maddie?
Yes.
Liam?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Candy?
Yes.
And Lindsay?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Cynthia.
I'll see you soon.
Get a quick break and then back you come. All right, so we'll move on to unfinished business. First, we'll start with a budget update from Dr. Foley.
Okay, I just have one brief one. We received our adult ed subsidy for next year. It's $19,251, which is a decrease of about $33,678. One way that we are going to mitigate this loss is a change that we are making this year, which is to transfer the money we receive for our 16 to 20-year-olds, which is about $6,000 in our subsidy, to Peters Cost Center. And this is line 171 in your big blue handout that you received last time. And then, Michelle, you may want to give the update from your meeting today about the property and casualty.
Or not. I'll let them do that when they release it to the...
Okay. So we're starting to get an idea about that, and so that will be another unknown that we'll probably be doing an adjustment and then giving another printout in maybe at the next board meeting or the one after that. We are doing negotiations, so we still don't have anything on that, but we have very few unknowns left. I got a little bit of an update today around Region 10 through an email where I think we've budgeted pretty well that it's going to be somewhere between, I think they have two options that they're putting forward, and one would be an 18% increase, so if they end up going with that, we'll need to add a little bit more for that, but the other one I think is more around the 15% that we've already budgeted. So those are all of my updates for tonight.
Can you tell me the number one more time that the adult ed subsidy has gone down?
$3,678.
Okay. I heard 30,000 in my head, and I was like, what? We went from 50 to 20?
30?
Yeah.
I did? Oh my gosh. I know my numbers, but I guess that was a slip. I apologize. Thank
Well, it was
you
a
for
slip in the
having me
right direction
clarify.
that we all are all much more relieved now. Okay, great. All right, so we will move on to our next. Did anybody else have any other questions for Becky? No? Okay. We'll move on to school nutrition. Erin Dow.
Hi, everyone. So you've all heard kind of my good news and bragging about the wonderful things my staff has been able to accomplish since the shutdown last spring. And you've also shared all of your support for what we've been doing, so we really appreciate that. But as this is a budget meeting, I'm here to talk about money, which could have been a pretty fraught conversation, judging by what I've been hearing from other districts, and also Dr. Foley alluded to the last time I was speaking to you. But I'm happy to report what I consider to be some more good news, both in terms of how we did last year, how we're doing this year, and what the financial horizon looks like for next year. So fiscal year 20 closed in really good shape despite the schools closing on March 19. This was due to a combination of reduced costs, but also increased meal sales at a higher reimbursement rate because we were able to operate under the summer meals program through the USDA's national waiver. So this year, when school opened in hybrid mode, we had over 200, almost 250 families signed up to receive remote meals on their non-cohort days, so we were excited about that. But we were definitely at a distinct disadvantage with a huge proportion of our students not in school each day. Our non-reimbursable a la carte revenues so far this year total $9,000 compared to $45,000 last year at the same time. And obviously our catering business has shriveled because staff aren't getting together and we're not doing those types of things either. Over the last couple of months, our in-person learners have started to increase, so that's definitely been a relief to see. So the summer food service program that started last March during the closure operated throughout the entire summer in all 3 towns. Between July 1st and the end of August, so the first 2 months of this fiscal year, we served 17,000 breakfasts and lunches. So that generated like $110,000 of revenue that we would have never seen were it not for COVID. So we have that going for us, which is great. We had 3 resignations as well in fiscal year 20 that we didn't fill, so that helped us, fill those labor costs that were associated with producing these meals at a time that wasn't part of the contract. So all of that considered, despite the reduced in-person attendance and all the things that we don't have going for us this year, I figured at this point that I would be presenting you with some good news, bad news type caveat. But that's not the case at all. So because of the efforts that we've put into to boost our meal outreach at several schools, increase our breakfast participation, and then our new initiative to do meal deliveries to families, which we did through the high school closure and then over February break, I'm happy to report that our meal counts are up over last year. So who knew? I'm not sure that's something that we can count on forever, but we still have tricks up our sleeve to help maintain the momentum. And the good news is that it means that my budget for next year, I'm just planning for a normal year, and that means a cost-neutral year, because really the only things that you have on your template is a few extra hours for my staff. I think it totals less than 12 hours total among all of my people. But I will say this about that, which is that COVID has kind of reinforced this professional belief that I've always held, that your talent is the multiplier for your successful organization. And so these increases are kind of intended to leverage our existing human resource in these 12 women that have carried everybody through this, kept these kids fed and taught against all odds, really. So we're hoping to leverage that to be ready for anything else that might come our way, because who knows what that might be. So on that note, I'll take any specific questions you might have for me about my template.
Questions for Aaron? John?
So Aaron, on the increased hours that you just talked about, that's to bring the people that work for you up, you know, to par with ours. So is that something that you're just looking to add to the budget next year? Or is that to like continue to have over time?
My hope is to do it over time.
Yeah.
I was already considering this before COVID hit. It's allowed us to move on our feet and be reactive. And if we're not reacting to a pandemic, we're going to be reacting to something. And maybe it's just reacting to new food trends, different budget constraints. So that, you know, it was something that was on the table before, but this seemed like the appropriate time to do it. So I'm looking at this as a permanent increase.
And do you think this will retain the great help that you have versus like kind of make someone decide they'd, you know, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to like leave over a couple of hours, but it's a positive for them in their eyes?
Sure. I don't consider it to be a reward, although
Right.
they certainly deserve it. But it is in my mind a retention technique to give these people as many hours as we need to do the job that we're trying to do for this district.
Great. Thank you.
Can you tell me what the asterisks are for? I was trying to find what they key to, but I couldn't find it on here.
So under the adjustments in the left side of that table,
okay. So
there's a
positions
little
marked with the asterisk. Got it.
No, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
So basically, these folks have been getting these hours this year, but that's been funded out of some savings for positions we didn't refill.
That's correct.
So it'll keep them at the same hours, but we'd have to add it into the budget.
That's right.
Got it. Valley.
Thank you, Erin. So that I understand clearly, all, there are very few, but there are a lot of positions with very few hours each. These will be coming out of your budget, or are these going to go to the school budget? Because we're talking about two different budgets, and when we talk about nutrition, I'm never sure if this is a request from the entire school budget, or whether you're just telling us with the new revenue you can afford to hire these people without asking for extra money from the general budget.
Yes. Ooh, I'm sorry. There it is. The latter. The goal always is to have the revenues that come in to support the program as much as possible, with the district deciding that if they want to be above and beyond what the bare minimum standard is for, you know, a USDA reimbursable meal, then the district puts in the money to support that desire. So anytime I'm looking at an increase in any cost center, it's always balanced with what I can reliably predict is going to come in for revenue to cover that.
Okay. And when I read here that you maybe anticipated some remote meals, do you think that's still going to happen next year? Because that's one of your revenue sources that you just described. Are you pretty sure that you will have that revenue?
Are you asking if I'm sure that we'll be doing remote meals in a
Yes.
hybrid or remote learning situation?
Yeah, starting in the fall.
I am kind of betting on that at this point.
Okay.
But I'm also, you know, in contact with our state agency and other advocacy groups, and there is a huge push towards universal free meals as a result of this outbreak, and a realization that, you know, maybe it's not the best thing to have people applying with a piece of paper for a meal to support their education when everything else, when every other part of education is so heavily subsidized. So while I do have it in my head that this is going to be part of it, again, we do have other avenues to explore to increase our revenues that would cover it were that not the case.
Well, this is very great news. When you read all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 additions, you go, whoa, how much is that going to be? And you're telling us it's nothing.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. It's like $80, $80 a day.
That you fund yourself, even better.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Erin? Great, thank you.
That was easy. Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda is technology. Gail, welcome.
Hello, I'm Gail Wilotsky. I'm here as the tech director, the interim tech director right now. But before that, I was at Mass Landing School and teaching STEM, and before that, I was a classroom teacher. So I just thought I'd give you a little, some of you are parents, so you know who I am. So that's great to see some familiar faces. I appreciate that. So before I get into budget, I just wanted to just give a quick shout out to the team, since I haven't had that opportunity. I've only been here a couple months in this position. So coming from a teacher's perspective, to see this behind the scenes work in the tech department, like Keith or here, who's coming to all the board meetings and setting up for hours beforehand. It has been actually, it's blown my mind how so much is going on behind the scenes to keep the technology running smoothly. And I just didn't even know about it as a teacher. I just kind of like, yay, everything's working. And you know, if there's a problem, then they're on it. So it's kind of cool to be able to see that and be a part of that and learn from that team. So just wanted to throw that out there. On to the budget. On your template, the asks that Jim had asked for last year on the left side, the big piece was the MLTI buyout. Remember that this was a bridge year for the devices that we got from DOE. They weren't able to fund them again, so there's this bridge year, so we bought the devices. We have them 6 through 12. They're in their 5th year of use currently, but we're hanging in there with our amazing tech team. So that was great that we got that. We were able to buy those for our students. The elementary staff all received new MacBook Air laptops, and that's been going well. And we also finished up some audio and projector installs at the middle school and the high school. So that's been great. So thank you for all of those things. The things that we're looking ahead to for this year, we'd love to be able to add an additional full-time district technician. Right now, we have 3 support technicians in the district, and we are looking to, hopefully that person will be able to support the elementary schools in Freeport, at Mass Landing and Moore Street. Right now, Keith is doing the high school as well as those 2 schools. So that would be a really important thing to have. And you know, anytime we look to add a person, that's building our capacity to increase the backup for each other. You know, so that I think is really important. And we've added so many devices this year that we just it's going to be one of those things that we're going to need some more help. The other big piece would be to refresh devices in grades 9 through 12. And one of the unknowns that Becky mentioned in her budget presentation was that the MLTI has not made any final decisions about what they will be funding for us. Since I've written this, I've learned that it's likely the 7th and 8th graders will be getting an allotment for a device, and so we would want that to be MacBook Airs to continue with what we've had in the past. It wouldn't come close to paying for the entire MacBook Air. So we are looking to get a lease through Apple so that we could continue like we used to do with MLTI. MLTI will no longer be offering us a lease program. So, but that's possible with Apple, so that's wonderful. So we won't have to have this giant increase in the budget to purchase all those devices at once. The other piece at the bottom, Google Enterprise for Education, that's basically Google's souped up version, and it's a step up from the free version. And that just this last week, they've changed the name to Google Workspace for Education Plus, just because they like to change the names on us. So that's what it's called now, since I've written this for you. But that would provide us with some anti-plagiarism, things for our students and teachers, which would be great. Some enhanced educator tools and better management and security features for our teachers. And the JAMF licenses, that's just naturally going to come along with needing to, once you add in more devices, we're going to need to pay for extra licenses. So that would be another increase in what we're asking for. So that was my speedy presentation. I'm happy to take any questions, and if I can't answer them, I will definitely get back to you.
Beth.
What does exactly refreshing the devices mean? Does it mean you're gonna like refurbish a device, or we're gonna purchase something new, or lease something new? Is that what you?
Great question. Yeah. So that's just another term for buy new ones. Yeah.
Can I follow up then?
Absolutely.
So you were saying there's lease options through Apple. So like, what is the cost comparison like to lease something versus buy?
Yeah, it's well, with Apple, it's through their education. So we get education pricing, and so I've been working with the Apple rep that also is familiar with our MLTI program in Maine. So actually, I spoke with him for a while today, and he's like, just can't say enough about Maine and the program we have here for the students. But yes, so it's education pricing, so we get a good deal, especially buying that many devices. So yeah, it's great. So the kids will be really well set up, especially considering that what they're dealing with this year with 5-year-old devices.
So the lease though is like you're using it and then so you're not paying full price? I guess I'm just trying to figure out like the cost versus.
So let's say, I think what the laptop cost is about $780, right? So per device. And I think if you were to go to the Apple store at the mall, it's going to be over $1,000, right? So that's a good deal, right? And then what they've done is I've asked them to quote for us a 4-year lease, and at the end of that 4-year lease, then we would be able to purchase all of those devices for $1 each. So then that opens up the possibility of, maybe we could resell them and use some of that money to help us refurbish the other, or not refurbish, replace some other devices, or we could use them as spares. So there's lots of possibilities there. Just like with this MLTI buyout that we did, we're working with a company to buy back some of those devices that we won't be using anymore. So we'll be able to use some of that money to. So unfortunately, there's so many unknowns with MLTI. I can't say like it's going to cost this much. They're giving us this much.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Vali.
Thank you, Gail. I have a question. You mentioned that the 7th and 8th grade MacBook Airs would be also purchased next year with some MLTI funding.
Right.
But there isn't anything budgeted for the other portion that MLTI may not cover.
Yes.
Are you confident that you'll get 100% covered, or am I not seeing a line here to make up the difference?
Right.
For 7 and 8?
We're hoping that, so when we put in this budget, or when Jim made the budget really, and I'm just sort of sharing it with you, but he was explaining to me, and Rick also supports this as well, is that we need to look at the worst case scenario. So that worst case scenario would be us buying everything without any support from the state. So that is in there. Those 7th and 8th grade devices are in there as part of it. When I wrote this template or filled out this template, then we thought there would be more funding for the 7th and 8th grade devices. But it will actually turn out to be okay because they'll give us the allotment for part of that. I'm thinking the rumor I've heard is around 300. And then we've got this buyback that we're doing in terms of, or the selling of the devices we have now. So that will get us some money there. And I think that's going to even it out for those 7th and 8th grade devices.
All right.
And so it's 9 to 12.
Okay. So what you're saying that you are budgeting for refreshing devices in grades 7 through 12.
Yes.
Okay.
You got it. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. And I think that with the unknowns with MLTI, it's really hard to stay on top of it right now. But we're hoping to hear more, I think March or April, probably more likely April, the way it's been going. Because we originally, when I stepped into this position, I was heard by the end of the year, we'll have more clarity. And here we are, it's almost March, so.
Thank you.
Jeremy.
Just want to say welcome first, and thank you so much for taking on this challenge, which is an enormous challenge. Really appreciate you stepping up for that.
Thank you.
Just kind of a usual dumb guy question that I always ask. What is JAMF license?
Oh,
what
yeah.
does it provide?
Yeah, no worries. So for JAMF licenses, that is the, for any Apple device that we have, then our team is using those licenses. It's like a management software program to help, apply rules to the devices that are out there without having to actually physically touch each device and like, I'm going to set up this thing, so they can do it remotely. When they send out to make sure that each device has what it needs on it, or sending out an app, then they can do it from their computer. So, but it is something that helps keep everything running the way we want it to, and the way what we want students to see and not see. So, sure.
Can I ask a question on, just because the tech piece didn't get elevated to one of the drivers of the increase for this year, so I'm not really sure what the dollar scope we're talking about here is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, first, am I understanding it correctly that we're looking to get new laptops for all of our 7 through 12 kids?
Yes.
Okay, in some form or fashion. Some will get offset by MLTI, hopefully.
You
Some
got
are
it.
going to get some cash back. Are people really buying 5-year-old laptops? Because they don't want my kids, let me tell you.
Yeah, no, there's lots of companies out there that buy them, and so so the company that I've been working with is called Second Life Mac, and they come in and they help us pack everything up and make sure they're wiped clean and ready to be resold. So yeah, and actually the 11-inch MacBook Air, what we have now, for 6 through 12, I believe they're not selling that anymore. So. So it's one of those things that it'll be really affordable for them to be able to sell that to somebody else,
Great.
So we'll get something for it.
So what's the number we've assumed in the budget for this 7 through 12 hit for the computers?
Let's see. So I think that, so with the 4-year lease for the 9 to 12, that is going to be about 145,000, but that is for 9 through 12. So the quote for, and that doesn't include the offset of the selling of the devices.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that is not a number I have set in stone, because it really depends on the condition of the devices that are given to them. So, so unfortunately, I don't, we kind of have it the same as last year,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because there are some unknowns right now, but as we get further along, it's going to be tightened up for sure.
So there's no increase in terms of what we allocated last year for buyouts and those sort of things, and what we're allocating this year, we're just putting it towards different things.
Mm-hmm. Right, and the Google Enterprise, which is now called Google Workspace for Education Plus.
Because that rolls right off the tongue.
Yes. I don't know how they came up with this. And Jamf licenses, those are both an increase. The Google Workspace will be about 12,000, because this year it was paid for with COVID funds.
Yep.
And this next year will be at year 2 of having that. So that would be an increase, a charge that we would see. And also with the Jamf licenses, since there are more devices, we have to buy more licenses. So that's about 17,400.
Oh, wow. That's a big number.
Yeah, those are 2 big ones. So, and the district, the full-time technician.
Jen.
All this discussion just made me realize that, with the laptop program in the state of Maine, apparently Angus King back in the day, like looking ahead and thinking that we may end up here. We're so far ahead of other states that don't, I'm trying to even imagine, like I have one still in high school, like how this is working for other states that are in this situation. So just very grateful that we have continued this program.
Yeah, absolutely. We're feeling pretty fortunate too, and now not just our middle school and up kids are 1-to-1. Our whole, one of the silver linings is that the entire district is 1-to-1. All the students have a device, so that was.
Yeah, and that's unusual even in Maine, right? There are districts in Maine where they only avail themselves to the middle school MLTI program, and their high schools aren't even 1-to-1. Imagine that. Imagine trying to be doing synchronous learning without it.
Right.
Hopefully they are now through COVID funds, but yeah, I imagine it is. Other questions for Gail? Great, thank you.
Are you? I have a question, but it's not actually for you. It's a request for next year.
Okay.
On these sheets of how we are delivered the information. If we could find out from the sheet very easily what are new requests for the budget, what is funded by existing allocations in the budget from the prior year, and what the amounts are that are being requested, that would help me. And this is for next year, so I'm saying it now before I forget. So hopefully, Becky, you won't forget by next year.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll remind you before budget season gets going next year.
So, for example, just so I can be clear on this one, like the additional 1.0 district technician, you're just wanting the amount there, and I think it's like 67,000 or something.
Right, and I know that is the other sheet, but so we don't have to look at multiple sheets.
Yes.
And then, for example, the refresh of the devices, it's really not a new budget request. It's already funded with allocations from last year that were used for other things in the technology department. So write those separately and maybe make a note that no new funding required or no new funding requested.
No increase to funding. Yeah.
Increase to the budget, right.
Because those are like new devices, but it's cost neutral to the budget.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Just making sure they're in the order that they're in my packet here. All right, so next is facilities and transportation. Dennis. Welcome, Dennis.
Hi. Good evening. So the big question is, it always is with me, is covering every trip that we have and give the students every opportunity to go where they need to go. And that's why I'm here. One of the things I'm here for tonight is to ask for a full-time bus driver custodian for next year. We work hard to try to make sure that the kids get to go to every place that they request to go, and we've done a pretty good job with that. But it gets harder and harder when our staff is out and we don't have the people to replace them. Another thing we're looking to do is to upgrade the ventilation system at Moore Street School. It's an older system in part of the building, and we'd like to update that using capital funds and reallocating the savings from a bus lease line. Thing is, our buses we have 23 buses, up from 21. We were able to replace one through the state. We were able to buy a new bus through the CRF2 funds, and we got a new bus through the Volkswagen grant. We got a good deal on that bus. So our fleet's in really good shape. We just need to get some people out there to drive them. I mean, we do pretty well, but it's a challenge. I'm driving, my assistant's driving, my mechanic's driving. When we're driving, things don't get done. And we'd like to be there when something happens, or, to do our job. So the facilities audit, ensuring all staff and students have quality facilities. We're doing a facilities audit. We began that in August with a ventilation study, and that's what led us to do some improvements at Moore Street School. It's important to know that that system is working as designed, but we're going to make some improvements there and some controls. So basically what we're doing is we're requesting a full-time bus driver and custodian for 2022. There's no other significant increases in the budget. And I got to tell you, we did pretty well with the CRF money. We put together some pretty good equipment for the custodians, the bus, some vans, windows, some doors. We really took full advantage of it, so it's kind of paying off in this year's budget lines. So we don't have as much to do as far as that goes. So that's where I'm coming from tonight.
And that's for a cost of $56,000. That you can just know.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd come up with that. Thank you.
Thank you for making that.
What you knew was coming, yeah. And the HVAC piece, to the other point that Valley raised, is really offset by a savings on another line with that retired bus lease, right? So that's not an increase to
Yes.
the budget, that's just gonna get funded.
Well,
by not having
we
to
don't
pay the
really
bus
have a
lease.
cost for that yet, so we'll be working on that right off. We have to send out a request for quotation, and we'll know a little bit more moving forward. The offside of that is we do less roof and, depending. We'll work that through and we'll get back and we'll come back to you guys and figure out where we're gonna go moving forward.
And the other reminder for folks is that this assumes the traditional 400,000 that we put into the capital
Yes.
every year
Yes.
for your projects that you have your running list for.
Right.
So all of those things are still in here and
Right.
still going to happen.
So, another thing, which is kind of cool, you don't really need to know this tonight, but we did have a truck in the budget. We did have a mower in the budget. We did have, in the capital budget moving forward, obviously all that stuff came out because of this CRF stuff that we bought all that stuff. So, it's great. We can do more just building work now, and we have some really good equipment to do it.
I would say that for this coming year in this budget, we took that savings from the bus leases of paying off and increased the capital line for this coming year.
Yeah.
From 400 to, I think it's 467.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yep. So we'll see how that ventilation ticket falls.
Other questions? Oh, Valley.
So Dennis, I saw in the budget that you also are establishing the account for the tennis courts.
Well, we're
So
working
that's
on that.
still-
We have a reserve account. We have some money in there for the reserve account
Okay.
moving forward. We
So
did the repair this past summer.
Yes, no, I mean for the replacement.
Right. So
Yeah.
we're starting that reserve account now.
Right.
Yes.
And that's 25,000, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It says 30,000 on the.
30?
Is it 30? Sorry. 30. Yeah. But it's in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I wanted to ask one question about the compressed gas bus. Has that been delivered? Have you tried
Yes,
it yet?
we've run it all winter in Pownell.
Yeah.
And it's great, excellent. It's quiet. It runs really well. It starts really well. We haven't had any issue at all.
Great.
So it's propane. It's not compressed natural gas. It's
Okay.
propane. But
So it's a technology that you may want to use in the future as we purchase
yeah,
more buses?
yes, definitely. I would do that again. We wanted to prove it out over the cold months.
Mm-hmm.
It's done pretty well so far, but it really hasn't really been cold for a sustained time right now. But, we have the rest of the winter to prove it out. But so far, so good. It's really been a dependable piece of equipment. Yep.
Any other questions for Dennis?
Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. All right. We shall keep moving and move on to community programs. Peter. Welcome, Peter.
Let me just say, first of all, that I always love seeing the school board, but I tell you that being called before the school board is the way I tell the story. But I have spent 30 of the last 36 days before today in quarantine, and so I'm not sure if I've ever been more excited to see a group of people that aren't related to me. So thank you for having me.
Well, don't get too close to us, please.
So eight people have lived in my home this year, and I am the only one of the 8 to not contract COVID. So I've had 5 negative tests in that period of time. So I don't know, I'm doing something right. I have been here with you not too long ago in this room, and explained to you that about the particular challenges that community programs faced during the pandemic months, especially in the first 3 or so months of the pandemic, where we could generate zero revenue and paid out all of our salaries. And I am well and truly seeing a light at the end of the tunnel for us this year. And frankly, the sorts of aspirations and goals that we had last year are still very valid and exciting, no less exciting this year than they were last at this time. And so I really have a very good feeling that starting this summer, we are going to be getting back towards something resembling normal. The early indications are that the members of our community are ready to come back. We've recently opened up registrations for our Laugh and Learn programs, and in some cases, the numbers of registrations that we have right now are already exceeding what we have this current school year. That's a great sign. We are a little bit behind our appointed timeline for getting out information about our summer camps, but the interest and the number of phone calls and inquiries and everything else that we're getting is really strong. So I think people are ready to and expecting to come back to us this year, and so that's really good to know, and so we're gearing up for it. And with that in mind, really as far as our budget is concerned, the things that I'm most hopeful for this year is that we'll be able to restore full hours and full staffing for Laugh and Learn. We had to make some cuts there this year. Our recreation program assistant and also our adult ed coordinator both had their hours trimmed back to accommodate the moving target of our needs and how much staff we needed to handle the programs that we have and the amount of revenue we have coming in. So I'm hopeful to get back to being at something close to 100% this year. As far as community programs piece of the local share, I'll just call your attention to the note at the bottom of my worksheet presentation that it may appear that we have a $10,000 increase in our requests this year, but it in fact is just a return to where we were before we trimmed it at the time that we were making some adjustments and cutbacks across the district because of the pandemic year. But I'm really optimistic. I'm really hopeful, and really excited about the year that we have ahead of us. I think it's going to be a good one after a really challenging year that we've had. So that's my summary. I'd love to answer any questions that you have.
Guys, you have to ask him questions. He doesn't want to go home yet.
Jen.
I'm
just going to stay out. Yeah.
Hang out for a while.
Yeah.
So this year, I did some of the online offerings, like the Chris Toy you did the online videos and the cookbook that came with it. So I usually do them in person, but I really enjoyed that. So I was wondering if you're planning on continuing with like kind of different offerings, like continuing with some of the ones that you could just do online. Because I think that, if anything, we've learned from the pandemic is how to make fun at home. That didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So,
No,
that
sure.
would be something that I would say would be great to keep.
Yep. Yes. I think that we are just a more adaptable organization now than we were previously. And that's, you look for good things in bad situations. Mm-hmm. And I'm really encouraged by the sorts of things that we know are possible now that we can do that prior to last March, we would have said, oh, no, a cooking class online, you got to, why on earth? How would we do that? And it's good to get that feedback. Thank you. And they have a whole series that we essentially purchased the content from them. So when people register for them, we have the links, we have the content available electronically, and then we can distribute it to people once they register. So Chris Toy is the best example of that right now, but there are other content providers that are out there that we can take advantage of. And yes, we do. So to get to your question, yes, we do intend to keep down that line.
That's great. That was fantastic.
Molly.
Thank you, Peter.
Hey, Valley.
So you did mention that the whole program was derailed by the pandemic and you weren't able to access a revenue that you normally would. However, I don't see any number of losses that you're trying to recoup or any contribution from the general budget to offset that loss? How are you handling that loss?
Right. So really, thanks to the cautious stewarding of the office's finances prior to my arrival a couple of years ago, I arrived in community programs in 2018 with a pretty good sized bank account. And the idea is that money can be invested in the program to improve things, to buy equipment, to grow as needed. And that was the cushion that got us through that period of time, frankly. So while I can't right now quote you where we were last March and what our balance is today, it's significantly less. But we had it, and thank goodness we did.
Yeah. So you're in the clear. You're not in the you're not operating in the red. You're black.
Well, we have been operating in the red, but we have the reserves to take care of it. Yes,
right.
Our expenses are greater than our revenue, but we have funds that we're sitting
right.
on.
But once you replenish with the savings that you had, then you're back in the black.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Phew.
Thankfully,
Thank you.
yes, yeah. This is the second best piece of news besides the fact that we didn't lose $33,000 on our state subsidy.
Yeah. Make it sound really bad and then go whoops, and then everybody's like, oh, that's not
right.
so bad.
I thought you knew something I didn't know.
Yeah, for folks, similar to Aaron's, how their budget works, despite the fact that they come and sort of present it to us, it really runs as its own entity, enterprise account is I think what we call them. Right. And their expenses for Laugh and Learn and these programs, they're all funded by the revenues that they bring in for those programs. So the only piece that gets funded by taxpayer dollars that flows through our budget is really that adult ed piece at $110,000. So
yep. That's right.
Just an FYI. So, he's telling us these staffing increases, but he's similar to Aaron, funding them with his own resources. Right. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Any other questions for Peter? Feel free to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, thank you. Just one last thing that I'd like to say as we get into the spring and summer and summer camps and summer programs become much more of a reality for us. I just would like to publicly and in front of this group just think back to last June and July, where people were still really shell-shocked by the first phase of the pandemic and getting used to their own normal and what they considered safe for their own lives, safe and acceptable. And our summer camps, our numbers were lower. We didn't have as many participants as we usually do. But we ran almost every one of our programs like we would have otherwise, and we did so safely. And we were really sort of at the cutting edge of the reopening of public programs for our kids. And so I remain really, really proud of that. And I think that that experience last year and then everything that we've been able to learn from our colleagues across the district and the good work that the principals and their teams are doing in the schools, I'm just really thankful that we're able to leverage that and looking forward to another great summer.
Great.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
All right. And now we are back to Cynthia. And I think you've got two, but it's all that you're going to cover both, right?
Yes,
the
I am.
curriculum and the gate. Okay, great.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to start on the side that says curriculum development and improvement of instruction. And so there were no budget, no requests rather for staffing for last year, and none again this year. It's just me. And on the on the bottom though, I did add the $25,000 is added to the budget for year 2 of our equity work that we're doing with Mid-Atlantic Consortium. And then I didn't put this on here, but if you recall, well, I'm not sure if I had mentioned it before or not, but I'll mention it now. Because the state assessment has changed over to the MAP assessment, which is the vendor is the NWEA, that's how you know it. We are going to experience a decrease because the state is going to cover the cost for grades 3 through 8 and 1 year of high school. So that figure, that decrease is $10,959, and it is reflected in the budget that way. So you can, if you wanted to go into the detail, you could see it in there. So I should have added that on there, but I didn't add that. And that's all for that side. And then if you flip to the other side, the gate, we have no additional staffing. We maintain at 3 FTEs for our gate staff. And I am not adding any requests at the bottom.
Addie.
Can you tell us what the $25,000 from MAEC consists of?
Oh, okay. So yes, we have a contract, and I'm hoping to hit everything. But the professional development that we're getting, that's starting on March 12th, and a series of additional professional development is part of that. The actual audit they did all of those focus groups in the fall with the staff, the teachers, and the administration. So all of that work and the reporting out of that work. They'll probably come and do, we're going to try to set up a board presentation or board professional development with that. They've also done a lot of work on annotating our policies. So if you remember back in September, I sent a big batch of student-facing policies to them, and I do have those, and we'll be getting to work on those after our last 4. So we'll start that process. You know, we're going to go methodically through them, and so they're annotated. They're not revised. They're just comments, right? So they went through all of that, and then I've just sent them at the beginning of January the Title IX policies that we talked about a little earlier. So they're in the process of doing that, and we've had like 3 or 4 emails going back in the last 4 weeks. I throw them, just putting this back in your inbox, you know, seeing where we're at. So, and they are working on it. I do get replies. So let's see if I'm forgetting anything.
Well, I don't know that I necessarily need it all.
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't clear that it wasn't just an estimate. I wasn't sure it was what's
50.
actually already contracted, and
Yes.
it's half of the remaining cost for that contract.
Yes, 25 this year.
But it's all spoken for. We know exactly what it's for. It's not an estimate.
It's not an estimate. No, it was a $50,000 contract over a 2-year period.
Great. Thanks.
But thanks for the details.
Yes, you're very welcome. Good recall. I'm glad I remembered everything. And
Any
that's all I
other
have.
questions for Cynthia? Oops. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've gone through all of our unfinished business, and we have no new business or personnel, so we are back to public comment. We definitely don't have anybody left in person. Do we have anybody online who might be interested in speaking?
No,
No
but
atten-
I just want to say at 8:02 we started, and we had 110 minutes worth, and we finished it in 50 minutes. So I'm pretty impressed with that.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Good. So doesn't look like we have anyone looking to participate in public comment. And we have tabled the executive session as we're not ready to talk yet about the administrator negotiations. So I would take a motion to adjourn. Vali, Maddie, thank you. All right, final time around the horn tonight. Susanna.
Yes.
Angela. Beth.
Yes.
Maura.
Yes.
I vote yes. Vali.
Yes.
Maddie.
Yes.
Liam.
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yes.
Candy.
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
And Jen. Great. Thank you, guys.